Hi guys, it's Kobe here, and in today's video we are going to talk about how we will do something like this in Cinema 4D, a colorful kind of like landscape looking scene. And this was created by Andreas Kirali. I don't know if I'm getting the name right, but yeah, I think he used Houdini. Looking at the tools, he used Houdini to create this, but we are going to see how we create the similar scene using Cinema 4D and Redshift. So in Cinema 4D, you are going to use the matrix object and Redshift to recreate a scene similar to this one. So you can use several textures, and what you are going to use is the MoGraph shader effector. So let's actually jump into Cinema 4D, which I have here, and I have like something similar in here rendered using Redshift, like a similar scene, something of that sort. So let's see how we do something like this from scratch. So I'm in Cinema 4D R25, and this is the previous scene I created. So let's go ahead and start the whole thing from scratch. So I'll go to File, New, and I have a new scene here. So the first thing is I'm actually going to make sure this is the material we are going to use, and this is a material I also found it on the internet, and it was also by Andreas, right? Or you can actually go ahead and also look for fluid arts, and you can get similar materials like that, which you can use back on your own, right? So let's go ahead and create bring in our material. So I'll bring my material manager. I'll click on this to bring my material manager, and I'll drag and drop it in here. I'll choose no, so I have my material brought into Cinema 4D. Even though it's a video, Cinema 4D will calculate. If not, you can actually double click and go inside, go to the animation tab in here and click on calculate for it to do that. I won't check the reflectance for now. And the next thing is I'll create a plane. So I'll come here and I'll create a plane. I'll make it 16 by 9 because that's the ratio for the video. So 1006 by 900. All right, and I'll drag my material on it. If your material doesn't fit, you can actually change the UV to, let's say, something like flat, and you can come into the material mode and now adjust it a bit if you want, and all of those things, right? If you like. But from mine, it's because I know it, everything works fine, so I'll set it back to the UV mapping, which everything is fine. The next thing is I'll go ahead and create a matrix object. So I come to MoGraph matrix, and in here we have our matrix object created. I'll also increase the count, or the count here to 160 by 90. This is temporary, this is just for now, and now everything is fine. The next thing is the mode is set to per step. I'll change it to endpoint because I'll later change the count, and I don't want it to keep the size keep increasing. I like it the way it is. All right, the next thing is I'm going to create my MoGraph count effector, MoGraph effector, and I'll add my shader effector. And I have a tutorial explaining talking about how shader effector works and everything here on YouTube. You can actually watch it if you've not watched that video about shader effector yet. You can still watch it if you don't get anything. All right, so in the shader effector, you can see it's affecting the scale of our matrices. So I'll come to the parameters and I want check scale. What I want to use is position, so I'll set the position to something like 40 centimeters, and you see it's moving everything upwards. So now we have to tell it which shader I should use to define the movement. So come to the shader tab, and now I'll change channel. I'll change it from custom to color, right? So now it's asking us which material tag it should use. So I'll click on the color picker and I'll choose this material tag. You can also drag and drop it in as well if you want. And you can see now it's moving our matrices based on the colors, right? And now it's also coloring our matrices. What I can actually do is come into my material. I'll first of all save this one, so I'll actually call it fluid arts for now. So I'll save it, and then in the material down here you can see the texture. Down we have this arrow pointing down. If I click on it, we have all this, and I'll choose filter. And this, what I'm actually adjusting is like color adjustment. I'm adjusting the color of my texture. You can actually do this before you bring it in, either in After Effects or Photoshop or Premiere, however you want to do it. You can do it before you bring it in. But I'm doing this in Cinema 4D, so probably I'll increase the saturation a bit and I'll also increase the not the brightness, the contrast a bit more, so that it get more contrasty and all that. Also increase the saturation a bit more. So yeah, for now we are cool. The next thing I'll actually do is to create my camera. So let's say, let me actually see where I want to. So I'll probably see, you know what, let me create a camera. So camera, and I'll create a null object in the center of the scene, make the camera a child of null object, and I'll zero everything, the camera, everything about the camera except the Z position. Alright, and now I can use the null object to rotate the camera. So I'll make it look upwards like this and maybe rotate it somewhere here. Now coming to the camera, see, somewhere here will be fine. Zoom out a little bit, and now coming to rotate it. So yeah, I'm placing my camera, and I think everything is fine for now. Alright, the next thing is, if you should hit render, you can see all we are seeing is just the plane, right? So what you have to tell it, and actually let me first of all hit save again and bring our render redshift render view. If I hit render, you can see it's showing as just the plane, nothing is showing, right? So we want to see the matrices. So what I'll do is I'll right click on the matrix, and I'll come to redshift object, and you can see right on the attribute, in the attribute manager you have particles, and it's the mode is set to disable. So what you can do is set to something like a point instance. And now if we bring back our render view again, and now if we hit render, you can see now we are seeing our matrices. I can actually hide the plane for now. Let me actually hide the plane. You can see it's showing our matrices as points, right? So let's go into the matrix and increase the number of matrices we have. So I can come in here and I'll make it like, say, probably 400, or you know what, I'll make it 800 by 450. Right, so that's a lot of matrices in here, so it take a bit to calculate, and you can see, but it's still showing at points, right? But in here I want to actually come to the matrix and come to its transform. I'll set it to, like, say 0.2, 0.2, right? It's not showing. That's fine, because you are not going to use the points. What you are going to use is, instead of coming to the redshift object tab, instead of using point instance, you can actually use our own custom object we want to use. So I'll set it to custom, and the object I want us to use is, we are going to use the tube, right? So I'll actually set the tube, the inner radius to, like, say 4, and I'll say the outer radius to, like, 6, right? So we have like a ring, and I'll reduce the rotation segments. I'll reduce it to 3. So I'll create another one. So this one object, I'll create another one, and this one I'll increase the rotation to, say, 6, right? So we are going to use these two objects as our custom object, right? So I can simply come into our object redshift object tag, and I'll drag these two into it. It can be the more of objects, any amount of object that we want, right? So this is the custom object you are going to use in a redshift scene. Now if we should hit re-render, it should be rendering actually. Oh, actually, let me go into my matrix objects, matrix transform. Oh, actually, this one is set to 0, so let's bring it to 0.2. So yeah, we can see what's happening. Yeah, so you can see what's going on in our scene, right? And actually zoom in a bit more. The plane selected, probably. Plane selected. You can actually zoom in a little bit more. So yeah, we are almost there right now. So the next thing is we have to come into our object, and this one is set to 0.2, so everything is fine for now, right? The next thing is how to add material to this object. Right now it's reading the color straight away from the matrices, right? But if you want to add something like reflection and stuff like that, it will be difficult. So first of all, let's add light. So I'll see, and I'll add a dome light. So I'll actually create a dome light, which I have here. So you can come to Redshift lights and you add a dome light to our scene. All right, and now we have our dome light. You can actually define the light you want to use, the dome light. So I'll select my dome light, come to object, and in here we define the HDRI image you want to use. So I have this set of HDRIs you can use. You can also look for some on Google, HDRI images. So I can actually use either one of these. I'll probably use this one, drag it in. All right, and now you can see it starts lighting our scene. I'll probably increase the intensity to like 1.2, a little bit more, and then I'll come to render settings and I'll change the renderer to Redshift. Right, so if I go to Redshift, you can see in here you have global illumination. Check this. So now this is basically our scene created. So if I should zoom in a bit more on this, you can see it's the tubes that we created, the triangular looking tube, and the is what is using as our object. Right, I can bring back my plane down. Yeah, so basically using Redshift, it's quite simple, straightforward. All you have to do is set your matrices and add your Redshift object tag, and now use your custom object, or you can use anything. So this is basically how to set up using shader effector and the Redshift. Now to add material, we need to create a Redshift material. Ideally this should be fine, but in case you want it to catch reflection and stuff like that, you need a material which has reflection and all those things, and to do that you have to create a material. So I'll come in here and I'll create to the material manager, and I'll go to create Redshift, and I'll create a Redshift material. Right, so if I should drag it and drop it on the matrix object, you see nothing happens because it's already within the matrices. But if I should drop it on the tube, you can see, and let's hold on a bit, you can see it's changing. So I'll drag it on the two tubes and you can see, right, everything changes to the color of the Redshift material. Right, so yeah, now for the colors to be, for it to be able to read the matrix object, the color of the matrix object, you have to go into the material shader. So I'll double click on the material, and the Redshift material, like, it will open this tab for us, which is like the espresso tab. I'll select the material in here, like the fine node. We will look for color user data. So you can see it's showing us color user data here. Right, so we can drag and drop it into the Redshift material tag, and now straight away let me actually bring this on here so we see what's happening. See the color user data. I'll drag it and pipe it into our diffuse color. So our diffuse color now connect the color user data, and everything turns black. Right, it's not seeing anything except reflections. Right, so now in the color user data, I come to its attribute, and you can see here it has attribute name. You can type it what attribute you want in here, but it's not necessary. We can come in here to the mode graph, and you can choose mode graph. You can choose color, and now let's give it a bit of time. See, now it's now reading our mode graph color. You can actually go ahead and type it in yourself if you want, but now it's reading our mode graph color. So now I can go ahead and add on top of it our reflections and stuff that we will want to add to it if we want to increase our reflection and all other things in here. So this is how you add something like a material to it and get reflections and other stuff as well. So I'll go ahead and hit save. So with the reflection, for instance, I can now actually select these tubes, and I'll come to its attribute. I'll add fillet to it so that I give it a bit of roundness to catch reflections and stuff like that. And I'll increase the radius to maybe, let's see, 2 to see. Okay, 1 I think is cool. I just want to see how it will catch reflection based on the material, what you can actually do is create a little bit, like create a light for it to catch a reflection. So I'll go ahead and create a light. So I've gone ahead and create an area light, and you can see it's catching a bit of reflection. So what I've done is in the area light, I've actually turned on, in the details, I've turned on reduce the amount of effect on diffuse, so that it wouldn't affect the diffuse of the color as much, but then it will affect, like everything is set to 1, so the reflection is catching a lot of reflection, but it's not affecting the diffuse of the material as much. So that's basically, and you can see now it's catching a bit of reflection. If I should take it off, let me turn it off, and you see you don't see it catching that reflection, everything looks flat. Immediately I turn it on again, and it takes a bit. You can see now it's catching a little bit of reflection in there. So that's basically how I played around using this. So let me actually go back to my old scene. So I'll go back to this scene, right? And this one also, it's a similar thing. You use the same thing, scene, like one area light and one dome light with HDRI, and added a bit of reflection and all that. And you can see, and this one has a bit of animation going in there, and because it's animated, and this one is not controlled, they can be a bit poppy, the contrast, it can be moving fast and jittery. So I added a bit of delay effector to the matrix object. So if I come to the effectors, you can see I added a bit of delay effector, and I increased the effector so that it sort of smooths the animation, doesn't pop like just back and forth like that. It gives it a little bit of smoothness in there. And I mean, apart from that, you go ahead and play around with it to see your camera angles and how you want it, things to move and all that. You can see, if you want to, you can simply change the textures as well. You can just bring in another texture to replace it with the original one, and it will go ahead and recognize those textures as well. So that's how you do something like this using Cinema 4D matrix object, shader effector, and the redshift in Cinema 4D, right? So for instance, let me actually come to my windows, and I'll bring my picture viewer. You can see in here. So this is what I did, like just a quick animation, and I added a bit of bokeh in here, and that's quite simple. I mean, I can actually quickly show how I'll add something like a bokeh. So let me go back to our old scene, right? And this is our old scene. I'll bring it back, and I have my camera set already. I'll right click on the camera, and I'll add a redshift camera tag, and I'll go to its attributes, bokeh, and I'll say override, and I'll enable it, and then I'll change the drive from camera. I'll set it to focus distance, and I can see there's a bit of blur in it, but it's not showing. So I can actually come to the camera focus distance, and I'll probably set it to say where is it, 600 for us to see, and let's increase the blurriness. I'll increase this one to like say 5 just to see how it's working. And you can see it's blurring the one close to the camera and actually focusing. You know what? Typically, when I'm actually trying to view stars like this, I first of all turn off the global illumination so that the render looks a bit quicker. Then later, my final render, I bring back the global illumination. So for now, I'll take it off just to see how it looks. Later, I'll bring it back. And you can see the focus distance. It's based on the focus distance now. The ones closer to the camera is being very blurred, and further away also is being blurred as well. So somewhere in the middle is where the focus is. So that's how you add something like a bokeh effect to it. And if you are cool with it, I mean, you can now go ahead and bring back your GI, and now go ahead and hit render. So that's how you basically do something like this in Cinema 4D using Redshift, shader effector, and the matrix objects. I mean, if you want to show how you do something like this using Cinema 4D's native MoGraph object and renderer, you can actually comment in the comment section, and I'll go ahead and do something like this using the Cinema 4D native renderer and Cinema 4D element only, no extra plugin or anything. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.